What's going on, everybody? You're listening to the Point2Point NHL Recap Show, Season 3, Episode 29. I'm Pascal Pryor, joined by Mark Havlack. Mark, we're kind of middle of round 2 of the playoffs. Some series have wrapped up. Some series we haven't even seen Game 4 or 5 yet. Makes absolutely no sense. But we're here to talk about the 2026 NHL Draft. Of course, we had the draft lottery, a week and a half ago or so. Maybe, I think, 2 weeks now. So we know the full order of the top 16, so we're going to go through it all. Before we do that, though, what's going on with you, man?
I was going to say, you must be having nightmares because it's only been a week, dude. You've probably just been thinking about it way too much. That makes it feel like that it's been a really long time.
Yeah.
But I've been doing pretty good. I mean, the draft lottery was pretty shocking. I kind of feel like sometimes, like when last year, how the Islanders jumped up so high that, like, I don't know if I'm wrong, but like, has it really happened like back to back years, like recently, where teams jump? I feel like when a team does jump at some point, a decent amount, like the next year, it's pretty cooled down. Like maybe like the team in second or third will jump to first, but nothing really outside of that. But kind of crazy 2 straight years, like the Islanders go from 11 to 1. Like not even the Leafs, the top 5. Like it's like the Sharks go from 9 to 2 and bump up. Like pretty crazy stuff, dude. So I mean, playoffs. Like I will say, I don't think the second round has been as close as some of the series in the first round, but like it's still been like wildly entertaining as well. Probably besides that Carolina Philadelphia series overall, but playoffs have been good. Definitely been some surprising results so far, and just kind of excited to see the rest of it.
Yeah, I'm definitely excited to see the rest of the playoffs. I know last night's game was a pretty good one between the Wild and the Avalanche, and that Montreal Buffalo series. Hey, you guys are looking good, man. You guys are looking good. Let's get into our draft, though. We're only going to be going through the top 16 picks, and we'll work from 16 all the way up to 1. So, starting off at 16, you got the Washington Capitals. Mark, who do you have them taking with this pick?
Yeah, I think Washington, like they're kind of in this situation now where like we don't really know what's happening with OV. Like they get rid of John Carlson. I would say even like if he's playing next year, it's probably unlikely he's going to come back. I feel like he might stay there or go somewhere else. And like when I look at Washington's kind of assets that they've brought in over the last couple of years, whether it's just trading within to their team, like someone like Justin Sorda, for some of the drafting they've done with like Cole Hudson and Ilya Protas, Ryan Leonard as well. Like I sort of look at them, and I don't like to draft for need necessarily, sorry, but sometimes when you are like this far down in the draft, even though we're starting at 16, like you might not necessarily have your pick at the litter, right? So maybe there is sometimes when you are drafting for need when you are a little bit farther down. But like one guy I really like for them is Oliver Suvanto, who's a center who plays in Finland. I just look at Washington. I don't mind their 1 and 2 center punch with Strome and Dubois. I think after that, it really lacks quite a bit. I feel like I've been pounding on this podcast for them to compete a little bit farther, that they're going to have to go out and get another centerman at some point. I just really like Oliver Savanto's two-way game. I think his offensive game didn't really shine too much this year, but he is somewhat of an underrated prospect. There aren't really a lot of centermen in this draft necessarily, and there are a couple center that I do have going before him. But I think midway through the first round, there's some people that have him a little bit higher, closer to the top 10. Some people aren't necessarily as high on him. I just look at Suvanto, and I think he's got a really high floor. And I think that it's a guy that is probably going to be a third-line center no matter what. And I think he does have some sneaky skill to him. So I think he does have the potential to maybe become a top 6 center one day, and I think it would be a good pick for the Caps.
Yeah, if he's on the board there for the Caps, I think it is a good pick for them going with the centerman. When you look at some of the younger prospects that they have that are either already in the NHL or kind of knocking on the door there, you mentioned Protas, right? He's a winger. You look at Ryan Leonard, he's a winger. Hudson, they got a defenseman who's in the NHL and going to be there for a while, right? Like, as you mentioned, like they're kind of lacking on that depth centerman a little bit, and I think if they're able to get one here at 16, it's for sure going to help out. And the other thing too is if the Capitals do want to more draft for positional need here with this pick, they have a bit more flexibility considering they have a second pick in the first round at 18, literally 2 picks later, right? So you could see it where they take the centerman here more for positional value and then with that 18th pick, you straight up go, who's the best player on the board right now?
Well, that will still be somewhat up in the air, though, right? Considering it's Anaheim's and they're still in the playoffs. So if they do get to the
Yeah.
final four, then that will jump a lot farther back. But you are right. It will stay around that range if they do lose this round because they were a wild card team in the second round. It might actually be a little bit closer to 20 or lower 20s. But I get what you're saying. Like,
Yeah,
it's
they'll
not
only pick
far
one
off. Like,
longer.
they'll have possibilities to do things with it. And I think that Washington, like, the one thing I will say about them is they've done some good drafting. Like, two of those three guys we were just talking about were second and third round picks. Like Ryan Leonard, I mean, I don't want to say he's a surefire thing, but like you kind of expect to take a guy that can make an impact like that within the top 10 of a draft, right? But with like Ilya Protas, I think he was drafted like 76th overall. Cole Hudson was 44th overall. So I mean, like, their scouting department's been really good recently, and I think it's also a reason why, like 2 years ago when people didn't think they were in a good spot. They do that offseason where they go get Logan Thompson and Jacob Chikrin and Mangiapane, and it kind of flips around their team. Well, I'll say this. I think they've done the same thing with drafting. Like, I don't think that Washington is headed towards some long rebuild without Ovechkin. Like, they might have a couple years where they're not really doing as well, but I don't think that they're in a very bad spot overall. I think they've got some really good pieces coming, and I think this is an opportunity for them to add to their prospect pool.
Yeah, I think Washington's definitely looking nice with what they have here in the first round going into this 2026 draft. Moving up to 15, you got the St. Louis Blues picking. This is the pick that came from the Red Wings in the Justin Falk trade. Who do you have St. Louis taking here with this pick?
Yeah, so I mean, considering this is the second pick for them in the first round, for them, I ended up going with a winger, and that a lot of people might not agree with that, considering they do have a surplus of wingers that could be coming. But I went with Oscar Hemming, who plays for Boston College. Now, me and you and some others have a lot more familiarity with Oscar Hemming, considering he wasn't supposed to be playing at Boston College this year. He was supposed to be playing for Kitchener in the OHL. There were some complications with a contract in Finland that I think it basically came down to that he wasn't allowed to play. He didn't get the right release. And if he ended up signing there, they would have like banned him from playing in the IIHF for like 2 years or something, which
Yeah,
definitely would have hurt him. And honestly, I look at him and I feel really bad for the way the season went, considering he was healthy all year and he didn't play in a single game until January. They basically found a loophole that if he can go to the NCAA and not get caught or charged, whatever the hell it was, with anything, and he can get around it. He started off really good with BC. I think he had 8 points in 10 games. His production definitely tailed off a little bit, but the way I'm just looking at it is I think it's so hard for a guy to like not play half the year, especially when you are healthy, and to be able to step into a system. And he looked very effective. He looked like a guy that you could throw into like a 7-game NHL playoff series and he'd be able to make a difference. Like, he's got a big frame at 6'4". He uses his body. He's pretty physical. I wouldn't say he's like the hardest forechecker ever, but he does use his body to his advantage. And I just look at his track record, and he just put up such good numbers in the junior leagues in Finland when he was 17 and 16 that I think that there's more offensive skill there than what was portrayed this year with Boston College. And he's also a 17-year-old stepping into a league with guys that are potentially 5 to 6 years older than him without playing a game in 6+ months. And I don't think he really looked out of place. I don't think he looked outstanding. But I think if this is a guy that if you give him some more time and just basically to stay with Boston College and develop, maybe it's another 2 years or so, I really feel like this player could step into the NHL at 20, 21 years old and probably be like a 50 to 60 point player.
Yeah, I like this player a lot, and I think if you're the St. Louis Blues and you can get him here at 15, like you put that pick in and you don't think twice about it. The one thing I do wonder is, like you mentioned, Hemming kind of had a slower year this year, but we've all seen what he can do. He did face a lot of adversity this season. I'm kind of just wondering, like, will Oscar Hemming even be there at 15? Because I wouldn't be surprised if some teams maybe do have him higher up on their draft board, just considering everything he faced this season and what they've seen, right? Like, honestly, where 16 to kind of 10 is right now, it's a bit tough to do just and project based off. You never know who's going to be there for these picks. But I do wonder, like, is Oscar Hemming maybe a guy that a team a bit higher up will take a chance on?
I think it's certainly possible, but I mean, I just think there's an abundance of D draft picks this
Yeah.
year. that I think that there's a possibility he doesn't.
Moving on to the 14th pick, you got the Columbus Blue Jackets picking there. This is their only pick here in the lottery. Mark, who do you think that the Columbus Blue Jackets are going to take there at 14?
Yeah, this is a tough one for me because Columbus, I feel like, is in a situation where, I mean, like they've got a good roster, like they've got some good parts of their roster, like they've got, I'd say, enough centermen. Like their D are looking pretty good. Depends obviously if Werenski ends up staying there ultimately or not. But I mean, like I look at a guy like Denton Mateychuk, like he took a huge step this year. A guy that looks like a legit top four guy. I ended up going with a defenseman for them. I felt like they were the hardest team maybe within the top 15 here to read. But I went with Juho Piparainen. He's a defenseman in Finland, a pretty big guy, 6'1", 201. He's not a guy that necessarily, when you watch him, that he like stands out a lot and he looks like he's super offensive. Like he's definitely more of a defensive style guy. But he's a guy that I swear you could put into any situation, and he's very calm, cool, collected. I think he's a guy that's going to eat a lot of minutes in the NHL, 20 plus minutes, play on the penalty kill. Honestly, he might get some second power play time. It really depends on how he develops offensively. But I think he's just a guy that's probably going to put up like 25 to 35 points a season at his peak, be really solid, very good skater. And I just look at Columbus and like they could go the route of drafting a forward, but I still feel like that the right now that they sort of have like an abundance of forwards. Like you look at even like Kent Johnson's not necessarily getting in the lineup every single night.
Yeah.
I just think it would be a little bit safer for them right now to go with a defenseman. And I know that Jackson Smith's coming. Piparainen is a right-hand shooting guy. I don't think that he's got real high upside to be like a top pairing defenseman, but I think that he is going to be like probably a legitimate number 3 shutdown defenseman in the NHL that can play 20 to 23 plus minutes. Like I don't like using Slavin as comparables because I just think he's like the peak, but it's like just like a lighter version of Jacob Slavin. Like honestly, actually, now that I'm thinking about this, someone like Esa Lindell,
Yeah.
is what I see in this player that can provide you some offense, but is just going to be so solid defensively. He's just got such an active stick. He's somewhat physical. And I just think that there's a lot of traits to his game where it's like, yeah, I don't think he's like the best player in the draft, but it's like, I just see his work ethic and how well he sees the game and like plays defensively, that he's just got such a good mind. And I think that he could play a long time in this league.
Mark, moving up to the 13th pick, you got the New York Islanders, last year's lottery winners. Who do you have the Islanders taking here?
Yeah, I think for the Islanders, I mean, like they definitely kind of rejiggled the prospect pool last year with 3 first-round picks: Schaefer, Aitchison, Victor Eklund. I still feel like that they need some prospects to add to their system. Like they've got some older guys in their team that aren't going to be there forever, and I think you need some guys that can potentially grow with Matthew Schaefer as he develops here in Long Island. I know you're not really very strong on this guy, but I went with Ethan Belchez.
Yeah.
A lot of people have had him within the top 10. And I will say he's a very intriguing player. Like he's a very big body, 6'5", 228. He scored 34 goals this year in 57 games. I think my one worry about Ethan Belchez is I didn't see enough consistency of him taking over games for me to have him as a very high-end pick. Like, I sort of went into this year, dude, looking at Belchez, and I was like, all right, like, how do I compare this to, like, Slavkovsky, okay? Like, in the sense of, like, I know they're not the same player exactly. They're going to have different careers, but I kind of went in with a new mentality when judging a big player, considering, like, sometimes they do need more time. And the one thing I will say is, even when you watch Slavkovsky in Liga before he kind of took off the Olympics, there were games where I felt like he took over the game and maybe the results weren't there, compared to Belchez, where I thought he's a good player and he's got good skills to his game. He just didn't consistently take over games enough. And I think that he was a byproduct of playing on a good team, like last year and this year, right? Like last year, I think he only had 20 something points, and he had like an 8-point game too. So it was like, man, like he's really scoring at like 0.4 points per game most of the season, right? And I know that your draft minus 1 year like isn't necessarily a telling tale. Your draft year could be better. I just will say his stats were definitely better this year. I just didn't see enough consistency of him taking over games as a power forward and him kind of using his body to his advantage as much as he could have. Because, man, like, one thing I will say about this guy, it's like he had the opportunity to step in this year and like be so different than everyone. Like we're talking about Hemming being a big guy. Well, dude, Hemming didn't play half the fucking season because he couldn't. So with Belchez, I feel like it was just a real opportunity to show that he could be a force and a power forward. And like, you know how many teams at the top of the draft would be foaming at their mouths to get a guy like that? But I don't even know if Belchez is going to be a bona fide top 6 forward. I really don't right now. And I know he's had some injury troubles. He didn't play in the playoffs this year. And I mean, I could be totally underselling it and maybe not giving this guy enough time to develop, and maybe he will be a force. But I will say it's just like a lot of these defensemen and even a couple of these forwards like really intrigue me more than Ethan Belchez right now.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. Like, not that I don't like Ethan Belchez as a prospect, but like going into the season, this was a guy that a lot of people had top 5, maybe just outside their top 5. And based on how the season went for Belchez, like as you mentioned, this was a guy going into the OHL this year who should have just ate up that league, right? And he really didn't, and it felt like there was a lot of moments throughout this season where he was inconsistent at points, and for that, I think that's kind of why we have him going lower in the lottery here. But for New York, like I do like that pick for New York. When you look at the prospects they do have and the players they have on their team, I don't really think they need to take a defenseman. So I think the forward route makes a bit more sense. And if you can get a bigger guy like Belchez to play alongside like a Victor Eklund, who's a little undersized, like I think that would balance out fairly well there for the Islanders.
Do you not think that they could use like a right-hand defenseman though, long term?
I think they could use a right hand shot defenseman. My thing is just like if Daxon Rudolph or Ryan Lynn is sitting there at 13, like if one of those two guys is sitting there at 13, I could see the Islanders taking one of those guys, and because then you can look at yourself and you can say we have a 1, 2, 3 of Matthew Schaefer, Kayshawn Aitchison, and Ryan Lynn or Daxon Rudolph, right, for the next 10 years. If neither of those guys are there at 13, then I don't know if you want to force that taking a right hand shot defenseman thing, right?
No, I totally agree. I kind of think that they are a candidate to maybe move up a couple slots and maybe pick a right-hand defenseman. I'm just more going off what's available at this pick at this time. I've got a lot of defensemen going above the New York Islanders in this draft. But I think that Darsh has shown, especially in his first year, he can be aggressive. So they wouldn't surprise me if they tried to get into the top 10.
Yeah, I wouldn't be overly surprised either. Moving up to 12, you have the New Jersey Devils. Mark, who do you have them taking here?
Yeah, New Jersey's kind of an interesting team, like high expectations going into this year, really good start. Just season really went off the rails. They hire Sonny Meta. Honestly, he seems like a pretty interesting guy, dude. I think that him and his experience from Florida could definitely make a difference. And him just being like a Devils fan growing up, I thought that was super cool. With the number 12 pick though for the Devils, I've got them selecting Wyatt Cullen, who is he's son to Matt Cullen, who played in the NHL for quite a while, won a cup with the Penguins, maybe both in that back-to-back in the mid-2015s. Now, Wyatt Cullen's a really interesting player to me. Like the US NDP has really gone downhill, I feel like, the last year or two in accordance to this new rule with the OHL, NCAA. There's a lot more opportunities for different players to go different directions. And I just don't think the USNDP has necessarily been as good as it has shown in the past. Now, saying that, Wyatt Cullen was probably the best forward on the team this year, like a guy who's putting up a point per game. And honestly, going into this year, like I watched him somewhat, and I thought at first, like you see some of these skilled guys and like you think they can maybe be something, and then you just kind of see sometimes that they're so comparable to other guys, and it's like, well, he doesn't really stand out. And sometimes these guys are like kind of prime early to mid second round picks, right? Like guys you think like you really like them, but you don't know if they're going to turn out. But I think Wyatt Cullen has honestly just taken his game to another level recently in accordance to like, he's so dynamic with his skating. And I think that's not something you can teach. And I think that at this point, like for him, I think he can be a top 6 center. I wasn't that convinced in the past. I think his skill level's pretty high, but I will say I don't know if he can necessarily be like carrying a team to a Stanley Cup, but I don't think being drafted at that pick, you're necessarily like expected to. And with the Devils, I just see it as they bring in Sonny Meta. He really seems like he wants to go the offensive route. Not that he's not going to care about defense, but he literally said, I like the mentality of scoring more goals than the other team. I think a guy like Wyatt Cullen at this pick of what's going to be available fits that mold very well. I know they have 2 really good centers right now. I don't know, dude. Like, I'm not saying either of them are leaving because I have no inside information on that. Like, he's got 1 more year left. Hughes has got 2 to 3 more years left. Even if they both stay, it's like, I love this guy as a third line center. And I think he's even got the skating and smarts in his game that he could also play the wing at some points too. If you really need him to, he could be very versatile. So I never thought I'd be saying this a month before the draft that I've got Wyatt Cullen going 12th overall this year, but I think that he honestly deserves it. And he's taken his game to another level, I feel like, since Christmas.
Yeah, I think for the Devils here, I think taking a forward makes sense. You look at their defense that they have. I think
They got too many D already, dude.
yeah, like they already have too many. I don't really see them taking another one here. And if you can take a forward, why not? And yeah, you do have Heischer, you do have Hughes, but I don't think any team in the NHL has ever said, oh shucks, we got too many centermen. Oh shucks, we have too many good centermen, right? So if you can get another one for the Devils, that's going to be a huge help for them. Moving up to 11th in the draft, you have the St. Louis Blues selecting again. This is their highest pick in the draft and their original pick as well. Mark, who do you have them taking here?
Yeah. So technically the second pick of the draft, we had a winger going there with Hemming.
Yeah.
So if this was their first pick, for them at first, I thought they had a really good end of the season, right? That actually put them in this 11 position. Like they were down near the top 5 at some points, right? Even probably near the trade deadline. So a lot of Blues fans might disagree with me on this, but I'm going with a defenseman. I went with Ryan Lynn. And one reason I went with this is a lot of people are convinced that Adam Juracek can be that number 1 guy. I honestly don't see it. I think that he could be a very good power play guy and maybe a guy that amounts to a number 2. I more see him as like a number 3 guy. But Ryan Lynn, I think, just has somewhat of a different skill set. Like he can be offensive, but he's also, I would say that he's got one of the best brains in this draft, dude. Just the way that he can contain guys defensively. I don't think the season necessarily went exactly how he wanted to. I think there were some kind of holes to his game earlier in the year, coming off a really good season last year. But I think that he's just got such an active stick. The problem is he is 5'11", but I think that if he does grow a little bit, like you're not really going to be talking about it as much. And I kind of think that his smarts make up for kind of the size deficiency. And he's a guy that can also provide secondary offense. He's not just a guy that's sitting there being a really good skater and good defensively. Like he's been providing offense for the Vancouver Giants over the last couple of years, right? So going into this year, I had him within the top 10. He's been kind of everywhere for me recently. He had an injury. The play didn't look necessarily as good. It was kind of like, sometimes when players even step into the NHL and it's like that rookie season goes so well and it's almost because like the league might not necessarily like know the player yet or how they are. I was starting to get worried a little bit with that with Ryan Lynn, but I think he's definitely picked it up recently. And I just think he's more at the lower tier of these very good defensemen that are going to go early in this draft at this point. And I think Ryan Lynn can be a very good player for a really long time.
Yeah, for me, I got him just slightly in that kind of second tier out of all these top defensemen. I think if you're the Blues, though, and you can get him here at 11, though, like that's a pretty safe pick to make, especially considering that when you look at the St. Louis Blues and what they need, like they definitely could use some right-hand shot defenseman prospects. And
well, dude, they tried to go get Murtka. That didn't go through. You can't tell me that they're not going to be interested in a defenseman. Like, sure, they could go the route of a centerman like Wyatt Cullen. I just think that Ryan Lynn's got more upside as a player, even though they're different positions. And I also look at it for St. Louis. It's like, I don't know if they're trading Robert Thomas or not at this point. Even if they do, it seems like they're going to get some legitimate center prospect back, right? So it's like then you're going to cause an abundance of young center prospects. So I just think I look at it as well. I'm just like, dude, they try to go and get Radim Murtka. I know they're not the same player, but right-handed defensemen also don't grow on trees. So it's like if this is something that a position that you think you need to fill, like I think you're in a good spot to get a guy that's in that like second tier. Like I wouldn't be surprised if Ryan Lynn had a better career than some of the other guys we're going to talk about above. I just don't see it right now. I didn't consistently see it enough throughout the year, but I think he's got some high upside, dude. I think he's another one of these guys that can eat like 20 minutes a night, like play penalty kill, be like a second power play guy, like just disrupt, you know what I mean? Cause chaos. Like, to be honest with you, I think Ryan Lynn, if the opportunity was there, would be like a perfect fit in Carolina. Like I think he's that type of player that he's just like he looks at a system, he knows how to play it, and he's like good at man-on-man coverage. And I think if Carolina could get this player, they would do it. Obviously, I don't think he's going to drop nearly far enough for them to do it, but it's that type of player, dude, and I think you win with those type of players.
Yeah, he definitely is an intriguing prospect here. Breaking into the top 10, you have the Nashville Predators selecting at 10. Who do you have them going with?
Yeah, we're getting into the string of defensemen here, in my opinion. So I ended up going with Daxon Rudolph. Now, Daxon Rudolph, man, I think that he is one of the more underappreciated players in the draft this year. Like, this guy put up 78 points in the WHL this year. He's a right shot defenseman, 6'3", 206 pounds. Like the skill isn't like super high like comparing to maybe some of the other guys we're going to talk about near the top of the draft. But dude, a guy that's able to run the power play very solid defensively. He's not afraid to mix it up and get into the dirty areas and be physical. I just look at this player and I look at Nashville and I'm like, their season was kind of strange. It started off bad. They got better. They almost made the playoffs. They still kind of get the luxury of picking in the top 10. I don't really know exactly what they're going to do with some of these veterans they've signed recently. Are they going to trade them? Are they going to keep them and run it back? I just look at Daxon Rudolph and I look at their prospect pool and I kind of think they could use like, is it crazy to say I think they could use like anything?
No, not at all. I was going to say the exact same thing.
Like, I just look at it and I think Daxon Rudolph at this pick at number 9 is the best player available with the other 8 players I've got going above him. And I think that Nashville should pounce on it because I don't think right-handed defensemen grow on trees necessarily. Now, they do have some decent prospects in the pipeline. Like, they've got Cameron Reed, Brady Martin's coming. Matthew Wood this year was really good as well. Like, I don't think they're in a terrible spot necessarily, but I also just look at them and I'm like, whoever the hell the best player is right now, you freaking take them. It doesn't matter. It doesn't really matter what you have, what you got. Even if you got too many defensemen, who gives a shit? Nashville has been very good at developing defensemen over the years, dude. They've gotten rid of a lot of them. They brought in some in. They've been really good. So I really like Daxon Rudolph at this pick, and I'm curious to see how some people value him because I actually sort of believe that he could be a candidate to be like a surprise and maybe some team has him at like 5 or 6. I really do because I think he's a very intriguing player. I think it just really matters how these teams value these defensemen, right? Yeah. Like we have a couple guys that I think are necessarily in tier 1. I sort of think he's tier 2, but I've seen some people say that they think he's tier 1. So you never really know, right? All it matters, it's like, it's just that team with that pick at that time, what they think, right? Like there could be no other team for 15 picks that would have that guy there, but there could be one team at that pick that is like, yep, he's there. We like him the best. He's our guy, right? So you never know what can happen, but I will say I'm very interested to see what happens with him.
Yeah, it's definitely going to be interesting. Like, as you mentioned, for me, I also got him in tier 2 for these defensemen. I think he's at the top of that tier, though, and it's could be decently close to him being in tier 1.
If also, dude, to interrupt, like, sorry to interrupt, but like long playoff run right now. He's in the WHL finals against Everett. He's getting a lot of eyes on him, dude. And a lot of people are seeing like him and Carter Bear have been going after it back and forth. So I'm really interested to see where he goes in this draft.
The other thing with that too is you look at last year and like we've seen it year in, year out, players that go on deep runs or play in the Memorial Cup, like their draft stock can get boosted a lot, right? So if he even goes and plays in the Memorial Cup and has a very good Memorial Cup, like this could be a top guy that maybe we do see go top 5 just because of how well he plays on the biggest stage. Moving on to the ninth overall pick. This one I'm very curious about. First question for you, Mark, is are the Florida Panthers even going to make a selection here, or could you see them trading this pick?
I kind of feel like I'm 50-50 right now. But I will say that if they do trade the pick, I think it's going to be like right before the pick. Like, I don't think
Yeah.
it's going to be like kind of Noah Dobson day of the draft earlier in the day. I think it would be kind of something that's almost prearranged and in their mind that they've got a specific player that they want. And if they're gone, then maybe trade the pick. Now, I actually wanted to ask you about this because I saw something about this that I thought was super interesting, and I don't think a lot of people are talking about. I don't know if you saw the end of the year press conference in Winnipeg, but like Connor Hellebuck wasn't very happy, and he didn't seem very happy with even like the way the
Yeah.
team was trending. What if it doesn't work out with Bobrovsky? Could you see a situation where they're moving the ninth overall pick plus for Connor Hellebuck?
Potentially I could. I just don't know if Hellebuck's at the point yet. Like he did seem pissed off in that press conference. I just don't know if he's at the point though where it's like he fully wants out, right?
Yeah,
Like we have seen it with some other players this year where they are kind of calling out their organizations. Like McDavid and Draisaitl when they get bounced in the first round there, right? Like they definitely were not happy. They were kind of calling out their organization a little bit. And I think it is something we're going to start to see more and more, like now that these players hold so much power and they're so valued to these franchises, is that like we're going to see more and more where it's like they're going to have judgment and it's going to be public because if it's not public, then there's not going to be any pressure on the front office to make these changes that these players want to see, right? Like I could see like if Hellebuck is available and he does want out, if I'm Florida, like, yeah, I'm all in on getting him and I'm all in on giving up that ninth overall pick plus whatever else it takes to get Hellebuck. I just don't know if Hellebuck's at that point yet. Like, because he also did say in that press conference that, like, he does like playing in Winnipeg and living in Winnipeg, right? So I think it really just depends on like where he's at mentally. If let's say Florida is making this pick though, Mark, who do you have them taking here?
yeah. I mean, this was more of a complicated one as well, just
Yeah.
because they've been so good recently and like they don't necessarily have a lot of holes on their team. But I went the direction of going with a defenseman, and I went with Albert Smits. And one reason for that is we sort of talked about pre-draft is I actually do think he's very close to being NHL ready. And I think it is a young guy that can step into their system. Maybe if it's not next year, maybe it's the year after. And he's a guy that can eat a lot of minutes. He's pretty big, 6'3". Definitely makes a lot happen when he has the puck. He's very good at running the power play. And I think he's a type of player that he might not necessarily have that Florida Panthers extra edge in his game, but I think it's a guy that you could definitely teach it to and he can develop it. Like a lot of these guys that have been to Florida, dude, like not every guy that's been there was like a prick before they were there, right?
Yeah.
Like some guys kind of like have that and they buy into the system and they develop it. And with Albert Smits in Florida, I just look at it and like they've got some decently young forwards. I sort of think they're not old, but like they don't really have a lot of young guys coming up either, right? So I think Albert Smits is a guy that can definitely play in the NHL for a long time. Even if you run into a situation where he's on the second pair and you got Mikkola, I'm sure Mikkola could play the right side. And with Florida too, like I would say out of anything, like yes, their goaltending wasn't very good this year, but like they had to go out and trade for Seth Jones, man. Like their defense wasn't perfect. And I still don't necessarily think their defense are perfect. I think they still could have potentially have some holes moving forward. So if they do end up making this pick, I really like Albert Smits because one, I think he's pretty close to NHL ready. Two, I think he's just a defenseman that can play a really long time, potentially run their power play in a couple of years, which is actually something they've lacked a little bit from
Yeah.
defensemen, right? Like they've had some different guys in there running it after Brandon Montour left. It hasn't been that easy. So I like this player for Florida if they end up making the pick.
Yeah, it would be interesting to see him there. And it would also be very interesting to see Albert Smits kind of being developed by Florida and playing below Gustav Forsling. Because, like, to be honest, having Smits and Forsling on the ice and on a decor. Like that could be pretty scary there. Moving up to pick 8, this is where we have the first Canadian team selecting, I guess, in the lottery. If you go backwards here, so you Winnipeg Jets. Mark, what do you think the Jets are taking here?
Yeah, I don't know if you saw the lottery. They almost got a little bit hosed there. You see, they had the ball. It was going up before the Leafs one, and the Leafs one kind of hopped over it there to get the first overall pick. So that would have been interesting for the Jets to get that pick. But with the Jets, dude, another team that I kind of see like they got some really solid players, but at the same time, like I still feel like they could use anything. Like when you're this high in the draft, they could add anything to their pool. And I think that they might get a luxury here with a player that could drop a bit in Tynan Lawrence.
Yeah.
I think Winnipeg, their most pressing need has been a second line center recently. I am a bit more skeptical now than I was earlier that Tynan Lawrence could be a first line center in the NHL. But the one thing I will say is he's not too big of a guy, but he still uses his physicality. He sort of seemed to be finding his game in the NCAA near the end of the season. For people that don't know, he was playing with Muskegon in the USHL this year. He was the captain of the team. He was the MVP of the team in the playoffs last year at 16 years old when they won the Clark Cup. And he decided to make the move midseason to go to Boston University, technically a semester early. And it didn't really start off that well for him. Like he wasn't putting up points. But I will say, like, there's definitely a transition part to that game. And the other thing I will say is if he didn't decide to do that, I don't think people would have criticized him for staying in the USHL. But I also think people would be looking at him like, okay, well, you're playing against USHL competition. There's guys here playing against even the OHL, I would argue, is better. The NCAA is 100% better. So I think there still would have been questions. I just look at Tynan Lawrence, and I think he's got that groundbreaking skill to his game. I've said this before, and I'll say it again. He has McDavid-like skills that he can portray. It's not consistent. I don't think he's going to be Connor McDavid at all. But the one thing I will say is, like when McDavid's picking up speed in the neutral zone and he's on that transition game, I know McDavid can go through that whole team basically and put the puck in the net. But Tynan Lawrence, I think, is going to be a zone entry machine in the NHL. And I think that there's a possibility that he could put up a lot of points. I think you just need to leave this guy for a year or two. Let him develop. Don't rush him into Winnipeg. Let him stay another 2 years at Boston University. See what he could be at 20, 21 years old. Because I still think there's a lot of high-end skill with this player, and I really think that he can be a quality top six center in the NHL.
Yeah, he's definitely a very intriguing prospect. The other thing with him too is like this draft, especially at the top, is lacking a lot of sentiment, right? It's kind of Caleb Malhotra and then he's the next guy. So I do wonder if maybe he even does go a pick or two ahead of Aiden. A team maybe takes a little bit of a reach on him just based off the fact that they need a centerman, and with how little centerman they are, like you might as well try to get one now. Moving up to 7, you got the Seattle Kraken. Mark, who do you think they're going to select?
Yeah, confusing. I would say besides the Columbus one for me, this may have been the most confusing one,
Yeah,
considering that I think that this is where I think there's a tier one and I think there's a tier two. And I think Vigo Bjork is sort of in that 2B. And the one thing I will say, and people might look at me and say, well, they took Jake O'Brien last year, and everyone was like, why the hell are they taking another centerman? They've already got Beniers. They've already got Shane Wright. Man, I just look at this for Seattle, and I just think that Vigo Bjork is like, is it crazy that he's like on his own tier? Like I think he's better than Tynan Lawrence, but I don't know if he's as good as some of the players in the upper tiers. Like,
no,
I
I'd
just think
agree with that.
I think he's got such a, he's 5'10" or sorry, 5'9". And that's what a lot of people are going to look at and say, what the hell? Why are we taking this small guy? Man, he doesn't play like it at all. Like, he has got an intensity to his game. He's fast. He's highly skilled. He's able to find his teammates. Buddy, this guy was playing on the first line in the SHL playoffs this year for a good part of the season. Then he got sent down after the playoffs were done to play in the U20. I don't know if they ended up winning the league or not, but he was a huge part of it. I just look at Vigo Bjork, and I think he's got a motor on him. He's got such high skill. I think he's going to be one of these young players that thrives. And one reason that I think that he could go high in this draft is there are three players in this NHL playoffs that are small and are making a difference. Zach Benson, Jackson Blake, and Logan Stankoven. I don't know if Viggo Bjork's going to be exactly these guys. I think he's got such good potential, though, that I wouldn't be surprised if he is a 60-plus point guy in the NHL. And I honestly think that if he was a little bit bigger, we'd be talking about him going in the top 3 or 4. I really do. I think the size here is a huge difference. And the one other thing I will say, it doesn't necessarily mean it's going to happen for him. His dad was 5'10" when he was 18 years old, and he grew to be 6'2". Might happen with Viggo Bjork, it might not. But some people, I think this is the player in this draft, dude, that I don't think he's going to go 7. I'll be honest. I think he's going to go later, because I think the size part is going to ruin it for him. And I think there's going to be a lot of teams looking back at this draft and kicking themselves they didn't take Viggo Bjork.
And I wonder if a team maybe tries to trade up if Bjork does start to fall a little bit, right? Like if you're sitting there, if he's at 9, and sorry, if you're at pick 9 and he's still sitting there, like is there a team that's maybe going to go to Florida and be like, hey, we'll give you a mid first round pick and a second round pick in this year's draft, and kind of intrigue Florida maybe to trade down, or you know what I mean? Like I do wonder if a team does try to trade up if Bjork does start to slip a little bit in this draft, because to be honest, I could see a team trying to trade up to select him. Mark, moving on to the 6th overall pick. This is where you start to get into like that, not necessarily the top tier, but kind of that second tier of players after the big two in McKenna and Stenberg. Who do you have the Calgary Flames selecting here at 6?
Yeah, I'm gonna be completely honest with you, dude. I like, as much as we're doing these rankings and I'm giving it to you, I am still so uncertain about this second tier. Like, I could have 3 different players I feel like you guys taking at this number 6, dependent on where I have some other guys going a little bit above. But I'm still not like 100% confident. Right now, for the purpose of this podcast and what I've broken down to this point in time, I've got you guys taking Carson Karels from the WHL. Pretty big defenseman. I don't know if you knew this, but big Flames fan growing up. Actually grew up on a farm, so this guy's like built like a brick shit house. Great skater, great two-way kind of like awareness and the ability to defend. A lot of people kind of forgot that he was on Canada's World Junior team this year as a 17-year-old. Now, he didn't play all the time, but the one thing I will say, like, it is not easy to make a World Junior team in Canada as like an underager not being drafted yet, right? Very strong fatigue. He's got high hockey IQ. The one thing I will say too, like, we're going to compare it to a couple other guys coming up. I actually think that he might have the most groundbreaking skill out of all of them. Like, I've been watching this guy, and he is so dynamic offensively. The one thing that I've literally came down to at this point, and the reason why I don't have him higher, is I think the other teams that are taking the other 2 guys would just prefer right-handed defensemen. That's literally what I'm coming down to at this point. I think for you guys, if you could get this player and pair him with Zane Parekh, that is an unbelievable pairing for potentially the next 15 years. And I know you're probably sitting at this pick being a bit disappointed that it may or may not be a forward. Like, I know you were sort of hoping for the McKenna or the Stenberg. Malhotra's there too, which I've got him going a little bit higher that we'll talk about. But I think being in the 6th spot is still kind of good in this draft. Like, some other drafts, you might not think it's as good, but I really believe that there's sort of like a tier of 2 players, and then there's like a tier of 4 players. And I think you guys are probably just going to get like I don't want to say the worst one available, but like just the last guy left out of what the other teams pick. And it just might be more of a luxury for you guys that you don't have to decide on who the hell to take here. But I mean, I like him as a left-handed shooting defenseman. I think that he probably won't run the first power play just because Zane will be doing that. But I think he could at times. And I think that it's not even just the offensive skill. Like, he is going to be physical. He is going to be defensive. Like, I really believe that Carson Karels is a guy that could like help lead a team to a championship. I really do. Like, I think he's going to be effective in the playoffs. And I think he was really effective with Prince George this year.
Yeah, I agree with pretty much everything you said there, Mark. Like, I do think it is that you got the top 2, and then you got that tier of like 4 players, that second tier of 4 players. And for the Flames, it's going to be who's still there at 6, right? My absolute nightmare, though, is that it's like Keaton Verhoff or Chase Reed that's sitting there at 6, one of those right-hand shot defensemen, and the Flames look at it and they're like, yeah, we already have Parekh, so we're not gonna take them. We're gonna go this other route, and then whoever they didn't take turns into an absolute stud, right? Like that does worry me a little bit. I do think though the Flames will make the right decision. It just really depends, as you mentioned, like who's still gonna be there at 6. Because to be honest, like I have absolutely no clue at this
The
point.
one thing I will say, and I sort of thought about was, and I know you might not like this necessarily, but if that happened and there was and if he say even Albert Smiths went in the top 5, okay, and that pushed and Carroll's went higher and that pushed down Verhoff and Reed.
Yeah.
If they didn't decide to do one of those, I would be okay, honestly, if they went with Bjork, because I think there's something there. But if it was anyone else, I would be a little bit weary
Yeah.
about it. But even with you guys, like I know you're probably looking at this and being like, well, we got Parekh and we've got Hunter Brusevich, and like maybe Henry Muse can still be something. But I just think, dude, that when you're that high in the draft, like these two guys in Verhoff and Reed could just be difference makers. I don't know if Hunter Brusevich is necessarily going to be a difference maker. And I think it's a guy that could also hold value. And if you have like a surplus of right-handed defensemen, like Brusevich is a guy you can move out and get something back for, right? Like, and you can bring in another defenseman. So if that situation happened, I would probably be advising you guys to take Verhoff. I just think Reed is a little bit too similar to Zane Parekh.
Yeah.
But I also think that Vigo Bjork, man, he might even be in my top 5 by the draft. Like I like him so much, dude. He's just been such a riser to me, and I just think he's just one of these guys that's getting underappreciated because of his size.
Yeah, I definitely think it's going to be interesting. The other thing too is the one thing I am interested to see if the Flames do is Craig Conroy, pardon me, has already come out and said that he's not opposed to trading up in this draft. And just given the amount of draft capital that the Flames have, especially in this draft, right? You got 2 firsts, you got what, 4 seconds, I think, and you got 2 thirds. It's like if a team like San Jose is trading down, or if there is any team in the top 5 that does want to trade down, like I could see the Flames maybe trying to put together a package where you are trading up. So I am kind of keeping an eye out on that as well. Moving into the top 5, though, you got the New York Rangers, pardon me, selecting at 5th overall. Who are they taking?
Yeah, I think you're going to be a bit surprised at who I put here, considering how highly I've talked about him all year. But I'm actually going with Keaton Verhoff. I think that this player heading into this season has so much hype, considering the season he had in the WHL this year. But I think that the skating is going to scare some scouts, comparing him to Chase Reed, excuse me. And this is like another player that we were talking about before we started recording today, of like all these defensemen, dude. Like, we didn't talk about Xavier Villeneuve, who I think is going to be a first-round pick, but just outside of the lottery. He's in the
Yeah.
queue. Like, we got Carroll's, Rudolph, Lynn in the dub. We've got Chase Reed in the O. We got Smits playing in Europe, and Verhoff playing in the NCAA. Verhoff arguably might be playing against the best competition out of any of these players, right? The problem was with him this year is he put up a decent amount of points, especially as a 17-year-old, but they didn't really utilize him a lot. They used him as more of like a third pair shutdown defenseman that I don't think they really gave him the opportunity to shine. But the one thing I will say is it's the skating, dude. It's average to me, and it really worries me. I think there's so many traits to his game that are good. He might be the youngest player who's poised with the puck that I've ever seen in a defenseman. He is just so calm, cool, collected, never panics, good defensively. I think he's a guy that is going to play a lot of minutes in the NHL, and maybe he will run a first power play. The one thing I will say is I don't think his skating is dynamic enough for him to be like walking the line and doing stuff like that. I think he's just going to be more of the guy that has the bomb. And that's why even when I was talking about you guys taking him, like I think he'd be like a perfect second power play guy. Honestly, like maybe he will run a first power play. I just don't know if I see it right now, to be quite honest with you. There are so many good traits to his game. Maybe I will be wrong, but the one guy I see a comparable with Keaton Verhoff right now is like Alex Pietrangelo. That's a player that I really see, like not the greatest skater, but being able to do a lot of other things at a very high level. And that's why I've got the Rangers taking him at 5. I don't give a shit about the Adam Fox thing, to be quite honest with you. I don't know if he's going to be there or not. Even if he is there, he's a different player. Adam Fox is
Yeah.
tiny. Verhoff is bigger. And we don't even know if Adam Fox, dude, he could get traded as early as this summer. Like, you don't really know, right? So I think with the Rangers, if Verhoff was here at pick number 5, he would be the best player available.
Going up to 4, you got the Chicago Blackhawks selecting there. This one's interesting to me. Are they going to go forward? Are they going to go defenseman? I don't even know if there's going to be a forward sitting here at 4, to be honest with you. Who do you have them taking, though, Mark?
Another very confusing team because of their prospect pool and what exactly they want to do. I ultimately ended up going with Caleb Malhotra. And the reason why is I think that he's a type of player that Chicago is sort of looking for right now, in accordance to, okay, they do have Anton Frundell. He does play center. I understand that. But Anton Frundell has also played a lot of the wing, like within the SHL, within the World Juniors. I don't think this is a situation where it's like, I sort of see it similar to like the Will Smith thing. It's like, yeah, I'm a center and I can play center, but I can also play the wing and I'm fine playing the wing. And I think Caleb Malhotra, like, I still sort of believe that he can be a lower end 1C. I really do. But I think he's going to be a great second line center if he ends up being that. I just think if you look at like Bedard, Malhotra, you want to put Bedard on the wing. You can do Frondel, Malhotra. If Malhotra ends up being a winger, you got the opportunity to put Bedard with Frondel as 1-2 center. I just think that Malhotra is like probably one of the most mature players in this draft. He is so good defensively. The one thing I was very weary about was kind of the high-end skill and can he produce? And a lot of people will look at it and being like, well, he played on the best team in the CDHL this year. I don't know, dude. He drove a lot of play for the best team in the CHL this year. A first-round pick in the NHL, Jet Luchenko, a couple years ago, who got called up, by the way, after they got eliminated and played in Game 4 for the Flyers, was not doing as well at center as Caleb Malhotra was, so Jet Luchenko was playing the wing. And Caleb Malhotra also had a great playoffs. I think he had more points than any forward on his team, and they have, like 6 or 7 other first-round picks that have been taken over the past 1 or 2 years. I think now Caleb Malhotra has cemented himself as the best center in this year's draft. His upside, I think, is still to be determined. I think he's come a long way, and I'm not really doubting him at this point. But I don't know if you would agree with me on this. I see him as like a more skilled Joel Eriksson-Ek.
Yeah, I kind of see that.
Like, he can maybe put up more points than him, but I think he's going to be so solid defensively, hard worker, just a guy that's going to be so important to your team. And with the Chicago Blackhawks, I mean, I did wrestle with the defenseman thing. The one thing I will say is I think Chase Reed is too similar to like Lev Shanoff or Rinzel. The Verhoff thing, I'm just not as high on him as I was earlier. And I don't know if it's necessarily worth bringing him in and trading Lev Shanoff or Rinzel right now. But the other guy I really did wrestle with was Carson Karels. Like, I'll be honest with you. Like, it was because like, I think they thought a couple years ago their D, not necessarily set, but they probably looked at it and thought, okay, we got Vlasic, we got Lev Shanoff, got Rinzel, and Korchinski. Yeah. But the problem is Korchinski is not working out well right now. He's really having trouble even just sticking in the NHL in general. And I think it's a guy that at this point you could really easily move on from. And I think that second hole on the left side for them is still somewhat of an opening. I don't necessarily think it's like, oh my God, they need to address it in the draft. Like, I'm not saying that at all, but it's a possibility. It's there. They could go for Karels if they want. Maybe they're looking at it as like, okay, like we're going to start to like make the playoffs and compete. Like, we can't have our top 4 being like 22. Like, you know what I mean? Maybe we need to bring in a guy that's like 26, 27 or something like that. So that's sort of why I went with Malhotra here. I really wrestled with it with the Canucks for a bit, but I think ultimately he could end up in Chicago.
You just mentioned the Canucks. They're picking at 3. Who do you think they're taking here? I see. For me, I thought Malhotra to the Canucks would have made a lot of sense and been pretty cool. Just consider
how do you think? How do you feel about his dad coaching the AHL team though, and has literally been in the runnings to coach the NHL team? Like, I don't know if how long Adam Foote like. I'll be honest with you, it didn't work out well with Adam Foote this year. But the one thing I will say is I don't necessarily think you should be firing him after the first year, because you basically took away one of the best players in the league off his team midway through the season. Yeah. You traded other assets. I just don't think it's like fair necessarily. I also think he's like a former really good NHL player who has experience, and like I would say at least give him till like Christmas or something. Like, you know what I mean? See what he can do and see if he can get this team heading in the right direction at least, right? So I'm just saying, like, if they get rid of him, Malhotra might be the next guy up. Like, he's been kind of in the runnings of getting NHL jobs in the past. Like, I really felt like Abbotsford's run to the AHL finals hurt his ability to get an NHL job last summer.
Probably with how deep they went, like a lot of those jobs that had already been hired for, but by the time they're even out. But like I did wonder, like is Vancouver maybe looking at Malhotra and being like, oh, we'll take him at 3 here, just given kind of the tie between him and his dad, right? Like I wonder if Vancouver does maybe try to go that route. Who do you have them taking though at 3 mark?
I ended up going with Chase Reed. Now, when I'm talking about the defensemen in this top tier, I really feel like the top tier defenseman is Chase Reed, Keaton Verhoff, and Carson Karels. And I have been watching a lot of video and doing a lot of reading recently to kind of figure out what exactly I feel like these players really are. Now, with Chase Reed, I just see a guy that is such a dynamic skater, a guy that can dictate the play. He can be the best player on the ice in any given night in the OHL. And I think he's a guy that's going to run a first power play in the NHL. And I think he's going to be a guy that is putting up maybe 70 plus points in the league. Now, I still think there are some question marks in accordance to defending with this player. I think his defending is very average, maybe even a slightly below average at times. But I think it's something you can definitely teach. And I just look at this player, and I think that he could have the highest impact out of all of these defensemen. And I think he's a guy that's also probably going to score a decent amount of goals, which is going to be very key for defensemen. Now, some people might be looking at me and being like, well, they got Zeev Bouillon. Look, I get it, but I am also just starting to sway in the direction that he might have a little bit more upside than Keaton Verhoff, because I think Verhoff's skating does scare me a little bit. So
Yeah.
With Chase Reed, he did miss about 20 plus games this year with an injury, still ended up being over a point per game. I really wonder if some of these guys, like, do you ever look at these defensemen in this draft? Like, do you think guys like Reed, Karels, and Verhoff are necessarily going to be like legitimate number one guys? Or do you think they're going to be like sort of like upper echelon 2 guys? Because I will say it's like, as much as there are a lot of defensemen at this draft at the top, I still have sort of question marks whether any of these guys are going to be legitimate number one defensemen in the NHL. And I could be wrong, and some of them do have the skill, but I still look at Chase Reed and it's like point per game numbers. Yeah, that's great. And he looks great. Yeah. But I've also seen other defensemen coming in and out of these leagues that, like Zane Parekh, he's almost putting up 1.5 points a game in his draft year, right? Like, I might just be overlooking it a little bit. The way I'm just seeing it, though, is I sort of think the OHL is a little bit, in some of these other junior leagues, like they are a little bit watered down compared to like 5 to 10 years ago. Like, the amount of players now that are coming out of these leagues, you look at their numbers and you're like, holy shit, that guy had 85 points in 65 games. He's going to be a player. And it's like, he ends up being like a third line secondary scorer in the NHL, right? Like, I don't think you had as much as that in the past. And I felt like in the past, if a guy really had like huge numbers and it didn't work out, it was more of like, oh my God, like that guy was so good in junior and just didn't work out. Like, one guy I think of back in the day who's talked about, he's not a defenseman, but he was talked about so much and they couldn't believe when he didn't work out. Do you remember Nick Patan?
Yep.
Like, his numbers in junior were outstanding, and everyone thought he was going to be this high flying point producer in the NHL, and it never worked out. And I'm sure there are some other guys that I can't think of, but I just think now it's like, I don't think the numbers mean as much.
Yeah, no, I agree with you on that. I don't like even like, I think for the numbers, it doesn't really mean that much. I rather take the guy based off like raw skill sets and what he shows than, oh, he had 85 points this year, let's take him here, right? Especially considering like these guys play in different leagues, play against different competition, play on different teams, right? I do like Chase Reed a fair bit though. Like, for me, when I look at the defensemen in this year's class, I think Chase Reed and Keaton Verhoff, I'm not saying they're both going to be no doubt number one defensemen in the NHL, but I think those are the two guys that really scream to me and say they do have the potential to be a number one defenseman. And even you could probably make an argument to throw Carson Carroll's in that group, right? Like I think maybe those two, three guys, not all of them are going to be number one defensemen, but I think they do have the potential to be number one defenseman. Moving on to the second pick here, Mark. This one is for me the toughest to judge, and to be honest, I think that like this is where the draft starts. Who's San Jose going to select? Do they trade down? What do you think is going to happen here?
Yeah. If I were them personally, I would make the pick. I think that um, I like I was talking about with the tiers. I just think you're putting yourself into a lower tier.
Yeah,
And what is really the outcome? Like you're gonna depends obviously who they trade with, but it's like does San Jose really need to be trading down to get more assets? Like, I don't really think that's the position they're in. Like, they already have so many assets. They've already made so many draft picks that I don't necessarily see them like moving to say they want to trade with you guys. Okay. Like, I don't really see the value for them, like trading down to 6 and getting, let's say you guys give Vegas his first this year and like maybe 2 second. I don't know. You could say I'm off in value, but say the trade is you're given the sixth overall pick, Vegas's pick this year, and 2 of the 3 picks you got from Utah in the second round. Like, I don't think San Jose needs to do that. Like they've already made a lot of picks. They've already like their rebuild looks really good right now, right? Like I don't think they have a lot of holes necessarily. And I think they can address them, but I don't necessarily they need to be like, okay, we need to get like 4 more draft picks to get more shots at the board. Like I think they have enough of that already, right? So I would make the pick is what I'm saying. I would make the pick, or if they feel like they're getting a huge impact player that's going to help their team moving forward, then do that, I guess. But I don't necessarily know who that would be right now, to be quite honest with you. So I've got them picking Ivar Stenberg. I just look at Ivar Stenberg. He had one of the best draft eligible seasons in the SHL, and there's been a lot of good names that have been coming out of the SHL. The most recent one being Leo Carlsson, 33 points this year in just over 40 games, played such a big role at the World Juniors for Team Sweden. And this is a guy that I think is going to play in every situation in the NHL. I think he's going to be on the first power play. I think he's going to be on the penalty kill. I think he's going to be good at 5-on-5. I don't necessarily think his skill is as groundbreaking as Gavin McKenna's. I don't know if his offensive upside is going to be as high as Gavin McKenna's, but I do think that he's going to do a lot more of the little things than McKenna will, including killing penalties, still being able to play on the power play, being a very good defensive 5-on-5 forward. And I think he's a guy that will be like around a point per game in the NHL, probably hovering about that in his prime, and also doing the other little things. Like I sort of look at him and I see not necessarily the groundbreaking skill, but I think he is sort of like a lighter version of Marner. And I don't think he's going to put up as many points, but I also see some of Sebastian Aho in his game as well. And I know he's not a center and it's different, but I think that his defensive ability is very similar to someone as Sebastian Aho's type. So I think with the Sharks as well, like you're looking at it and they're like, they need a defenseman. I don't disagree that they need a defenseman, but I will be honest with you. I think if they took a defenseman over Stenberg, it's a mistake at this pick. I just think it's a different tier. And I think that if you really think you need a defenseman, there's a lot of defensemen that are going to go high in this draft. Why can't you package a player or a prospect you have with that pick you're getting from the Oilers to move up in the draft, or even trade for an impact defenseman? I don't necessarily see the problem in doing that, to be quite honest with you. I look at it, dude, and honestly, I think if you bring in Ivar Stenberg, like, I think it makes William Eklund expendable. I really do. Maybe it's not instantly. Maybe they go the route of trading like Quentin Musty. Maybe it's something like that. But I think that you can't let this type of player go, dude. Like, he's just going to be such an impact good player that I don't think I'm like beating around the bush to be like, well, we don't need a forward. You know what I mean? Well, to be honest with you, Ivar Stenberg's probably like it's still debatable, right? They've got some good forwards. He's obviously not going to be as good as Celebrini, but like, I don't know, maybe he can be as good as Michael Misa or Will Smith. Like, I don't know at this point, right? And it's like, why would you want to pass up on that opportunity, right? Like, he's going to be better than Quentin Musty. I think he's going to be better than William Eklund in his prime. It's just like, You have it in your lap. Just make the pick. And if you really have too much of something somewhere else, you can use it to trade it. You're telling me half the league wouldn't be interested in trading for William Eklund?
Oh, but I think a bunch of teams would be interested in William Eklund if he was available.
Like I could even see a situation where they draft Stenberg, and I know the value is not going to add up, and someone's going to have to add more. But could you not see the Sharks making a trade with the Devils and say, "Hey, we got William Eklund. What's it going to take to get Simone Nemec?"
Yeah, I could see that. Something like you'd have to figure out the values that you mentioned, but I think that's a good starting point on a trade, to be honest.
So what I'm saying is, it's just like it's not just, oh my God, they got to take Chase Reed or Keaton Verhoff at 2. I think that if you just really look at it and break it down, that I think Stenberg, even as a winger, has the higher potential than any defenseman in this draft right now. And I would just
Yeah.
make the pick. I wouldn't overthink it at all. Unless you're legitimately getting an offer for a player that you think can help Celebrini in the core moving forward, who's cost controlled, under contract, and you don't really need to do a lot with. But I mean, that's also a bigger conversation. Like it would have to be a huge impact player to make that move, in my opinion.
Yeah. Moving on to the number one overall pick, Mark, it is the Toronto Maple Leafs. I think this one's unanimous. Everybody kind of knows who they're taking at this point. Who's going to the Toronto Maple Leafs, Mark?
Yeah, I mean, if it was my opinion, it's the same thing with the Stenberg thing. I really wouldn't overthink it, and I would pick Gavin McKenna. I will say that there is definitely discussions, and I'm open to the discussions about Ivar Stenberg going one, and I do understand the mentality. I just look at it as if I'm picking number one, I don't want to say I don't care about defense because I think that's wrong to say, but I would just prefer to pick the player who has the highest offensive upside and worry about the defensive part as we're developing and progressing in his career. I think Gavin McKenna, I mean, it is possible he goes back to Penn State this year, but I do think it's unlikely. I think he is probably going to step into the NHL. I think that the Leafs were obviously kind of a tire fire this year, but I mean, he'd be playing with a guy that has gone through it before in the same market, right? William Nylander was a top pick in this market as well. Morgan Riley was as well. So what I'm saying is he's got some good guys to kind of lean off of, you know what I mean, as he makes his way into the NHL. I think Gavin McKenna's got some groundbreaking skill. I think he's a guy that in his prime, maybe a couple times could put up 100 plus points. I think he's probably going to be about a 90 plus point guy for most of it. Definitely has got some Kucherov-esque skill to his game that he shows it sometimes. I will say I thought he was a lot better after the World Juniors this year. Some of those numbers were inflated by an 8-point game against Ohio State. So he is probably more of just a bit over a point per game player. But I will say, dude, like that's still very impressive for a 17-year-old. Like people are acting like it's like nothing and comparing him to other players. I just don't know if he's got the same potential as some of these other guys that have came out of university in the past, like Eichel, Celebrini. I even wonder, like, does he have more potential than like an Adam Fantilli? Like I really don't know at this point, right? So him being a winger is a bit different, but the one thing I will say, like the defensive side of the game and the details in his game are somewhat concerning at times, for sure. I don't think this is like a perfect player by any stretch. I think it's a guy that's very offensively skilled and has high potential, but I will say that there are still some quirks to his game that he needs to figure out and are very reasonable for some people that don't have him at first overall. Like I'll say, dude, there's more people that have Stenberg over McKenna than I would have thought. Like, I don't necessarily agree with it, but I would say right now it's about 70-30. Like, I don't think it's like necessarily unanimous. Like, the one thing I'll say is it really matters what the Leafs think about it. And the one thing I wanted to ask you is, what do you think that this will matter how much? Like, because, dude, Sundin has been in Sweden. Like, I'm sure he's seen this kid play a lot, Stenberg, right? So it really matters what he thinks. And I don't think, like, Sundin's necessarily going to have the final decision. But I really wonder what he thinks of this player. And I wonder if it's more of a debate than people are leading on.
Yeah, I do have questions about that. In the back of my head, though, I think, like, if you're the Leafs, you take McKenna because here's the thing. If they take Stenberg and McKenna goes 2, or wherever McKenna goes, let's say McKenna goes 15th, dude. If you take Stenberg and you don't take McKenna and it doesn't really work out too well, especially next year, even next season, let's say next season, McKenna has a good year in San Jose. Stenberg has a not good year with the Leafs, dude, like the media in Toronto, Leafs fans are going to be so upset about that. Like it would be such a headache for that Leafs organization to deal with, right? Like I think you take McKenna here if you're the Leafs. Don't really overthink it too much. But I do agree with what you said. Like I do wonder what Sundin's thinking, considering he's been in Sweden, seen Stenberg probably play a whole lot here, right? Like it
It's
is,
not just because he's Swedish. It's just like, dude, Sundin's been living there. This guy's
yeah,
been
like
playing there for years. Like, I mean, I'm sure he's seen a lot more of Stenberg than he's seen of McKenna,
yeah,
right? Like, I just really am curious what he thinks about him. And the one thing about John Chayka, too, is like, he's a data guy, right? Like I wonder how much he values like the defense over offense thing. Like, you know what I mean? Like I still think there's sort of question marks. I'm not inside the scouting department. I don't really know. All I'll say is I don't necessarily think it's unanimous. Like
yeah. I wouldn't.
compared to other years, I really don't. I think it's still a question, but just because I don't think it's unanimous doesn't mean I don't think that McKenna's still going to go one.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. Like maybe it's not unanimous, but it's definitely going to be interesting to see what happens here draft night. Overall, though, that's going to wrap up this week's episode. Next week we'll be back. We'll probably be doing a conference finals preview episode, so stay tuned for that. But for everybody listening in, thanks for tuning in.